Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another Cinema 4D tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about some modeling tips and techniques inside Cinema 4D. And for today's project, I'm just going to be modeling a tire. Now this is a pretty generic tire. It's not actually even complete, but there's a lot of good things we can learn from this, such as creating the tread and the tire itself, and then just modeling the actual rims themselves. There's a lot of different tools that we're going to get to use, and I hope that you guys will pick up a lot from this. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is go up to File and open up a new project. Okay, so with our new project open, what we're going to do to get things started is grab our reference object. Our reference object is going to be this tube, just because this makes the most sense to start modeling a rim from. So we're going to click and drag and drop that into our scene just like that. And then we're going to go into our 4-view mode and go over here to the front view, and we're going to grab a red axis point, click, and then hold down shift at the same time simultaneously, and then drag our mouse, and we will enable snap rotation and rotate this exactly 90 degrees. To go ahead and set this up even further, we'll go up to display, and we'll make sure that we're on wireframe and lines are selected, because we need to be able to make sure that we can see all of our geometry. So the next thing we need to do is, while clicking on the front view, is go to hold down shift and V at the same time, and that'll bring up our viewport options, and from here we can select an image. So I recommend going on Google and grabbing a reference image of some kind. It could be that of of course a car rim, whatever you want, Porsche, Lamborghini, whatever, and load it up through here. So once you have your image, we'll go ahead and grab that and load it in here, and you'll see it come into picture. So to set this up, we need to reduce the transparency so we can see our geometry a little bit better, and we'll kind of reduce it a little bit, and then we'll go back to the tube and we'll change the outer radius to match that of our reference image somewhat. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's going to be a little rough, and that's okay. So we'll make it relatively close, and we'll call that good. Our inner radius, we're going to make the inner radius the same as the reference image, of course. So we'll roughly eye that up until we find something pretty close, and we'll say that's good. So if we go back into our perspective view, you'll see that's what we have. And if we want, we can even go to the scale tool and make this tube a little bit wider if we want the rims to be a little bit wider. Personal preference, but we'll say that's good. It's not going to be super wide, maybe a little bit wider actually, might make more sense. We'll make it about that wide, okay? And next, what we're going to do is, let's go ahead and I think we need to add some other segments in here, because if we go to display and go to shading with lines, you're going to see our geometry a little bit better. We need some geometry to be split right down the middle here. We could do this later, but it's a little bit easier just to go ahead and do it right now. And we can control that by using the height segments. So we'll split this up into, let's say 3 height segments, and we'll call that good. So once we have our height segments, let's go ahead and go back into our front view. And the very first step into creating this rim is to make the object editable. So to do that, we're going to highlight the object and press C on our keyboard. And the second we do that, that's going to change the way Cinema 4D interprets this object. It is no longer considered, procedural or parametric, so we can't go in and make adjustments to it as easily as we could before. You'll see that all of our options we had previously are now gone. And now we have free reign to manipulate the geometry in any way we want to. So once we have made the object editable, what we're going to do is go over to the point mode, and you're going to see all these little black dots pop up. And what we need to do with these black dots is go to our live selection tool, for example, and we'll just zoom in here, and we're going to grab these points, grab this little move tool, and real quick, I made a mistake. I always forget to do this. Make sure that only select visible elements is off. If we select that off when we select these points from a front perspective, it's not only going to grab what we see, but it's going to grab all these points through it as well, which is nice. And what we'll do is just kind of move this over a little bit. What we're trying to do is line this geometry up with that of the picture, just like so. So we'll move around here and we'll make the necessary adjustments, because we kind of want this geometry to be lined up with the rest of the spoke. And it's from this point, it's just a repetitive process of doing this over and over and over again until we get everything lined up and matching the way we need it to. So if you guys are good good with this so far, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and continue doing this for the rest of the spokes, and then I'll be right back. Alright guys, so I just finished up lining up this geometry with the spokes, so we can start extruding this geometry. Doesn't have to be super accurate, so it's okay. It looks a little rough right now, but that's alright. So at this point, what we need to do is grab our Polygon mode tool and start highlighting where we need to extrude from. So what I'll do is just have the live selection tool enabled, and I'll also only select visible elements, make sure that's checked on. And while doing this, I will hold down Shift so I can grab more than one point. Even though I let go of the mouse, this will allow me to grab more than one point. So I'll highlight all these points, and I'm only doing this right now at this point in time so that I know which points to grab here in the perspective view. So when we're in the perspective view, we need this point and this point, and at the same time we can hold down Control and then click, and that will deselect these points. And we're just going to do that until we've selected all of these. So I'm going to hold down Shift again, select that point, hold down Control, and deselect that point. And I will keep doing this for the rest of the spots that need to be highlighted. So I'll go over here, hold down Shift, and then hold down Control and deselect. I'll come over here and hold down Shift, hold down Control and deselect. And it's just a repetitive process. So hold down Shift, deselect, deselect. Alright, so once we have all of our points like that, we are ready to begin extruding the geometry. To do that, what we have to do is hold down Control and then drag inwards, and look at that. That will extrude our geometry. Now don't worry that it looks all weird right now, because we will fix that. I'm going to go in my perspective view and just drag and extrude the geometry like so. Alright. Alright, so now we have that. Let's go back to our point mode tool, our point mode. And what we need to do is just grab all these points again and adjust them and move them. Make sure we check this off. I keep forgetting only select visible elements because we need to select all the points. And just drag this so that it lines up somewhat close. So again, doesn't have to be perfect. We are going to continue to do this process for all of the other points so that it lines up with the spoke, and we can get this nice beveled look that the rim has right now. So let me go ahead and pause the video. I will be right back once I finish this, and then we'll go from there. Okay guys, so I just finished that up. If we go ahead and take a look, you'll see that's what we have so far. So we've got the first part of this taken care of for the most part. So pretty much it's the same process. Once again, what we can do now is use the edge mode tool, and we'll just grab all of these edges. So we can hold down Shift and continue to grab every single one of these edges. And once I have all of these selected, once again, it is the same process. So we're going to extrude all of these points. We need to make sure, actually what might be easier is just using the polygon mode tool. Go ahead and once we grab the edges, hit the polygon mode tool so we select the entire polygon. And we just have the edges selected. And then we're going to hold down Control again and then click and drag so that we can finish up creating the spokes. So we'll do something like that. Once again, we're going to have to go back in here and modify all these points. So we'll go back to point mode and just drag these points and make sure they line up somewhat close. So we'll call that good. And we'll just keep repeating this process until we have all of these points taken care of. So once again, I will pause the video until we're done with this, and we'll move on to the very next step. Alright, now that step is done. You can see that we've lined up the geometry with these spokes. Now we've left this little section open because we need to do something a little bit different to work this. So we just left that section open for now. But if we go back into our perspective view, you can see that's what we have. So we're starting to get the main basic shape of the rims. Now from what it looks like in this image, the inner spokes here, the spokes here are kind of offset a little bit in, so it protrudes in a little bit. So to kind of give that effect and sell the bend a little bit more, what we're going to do is grab all these points from all of these different spokes, and we're just going to, once we have them all selected, is make sure that once we have them all selected, we're going to take our little move tool here and we're going to push these in just like so. And you might notice you're getting some weird shading going on. That has to do with the Phong tag limits, the angle limits and everything. But we'll just push it in a little bit to maybe something like that. It's kind of hard to tell, but we'll call that good. And we'll go back to the Phong tag and we'll reduce the Phong angle a little bit till we get rid of all that really awkward looking shading we had going on there. And if I just add in some, go to my render settings, add some AO in real fast, give this a quick render preview, you might be able to see that go, it's kind of dipping in a little bit better from the side angle. So we just kind of pulled everything towards the center in a little bit. Go back to our front view. Once again, that's what we have. And so at this point, we are ready to move on to the very next step. Once we have that, let's go ahead and deselect everything. Once we've got our geometry all lined up here with our spokes, now we just need to fill in this little gap here. Luckily for us, in Cinema 4D R16, there's this nice tool called the Polygon Tool. So if you go to Mesh, Create Tools, and then go to Polygon Pen, this allows us to pretty much draw and create polygons. So we'll click, and we'll continue to click across all these points, and then we'll click up here, click across here, and then finally click at our starting point to meld those 2 points together. If we go into our perspective view, you will see that we just created a polygon. Now it is two-dimensional, so what we're going to have to do is do the same thing on this side. So click across, and then we're going to click up and then click over. We can adjust this later, so it's not super important that it's completely perfect until we get something like that. And real quick, I'm just going to adjust this point so that it is straight, and that should be fine. Alright, so let's go back up to Mesh, Create Tools, Polygon Pen, and we'll do the same thing for the sides, like so. Bridge those points together, and you can see we've got that, and it's just the same repetitive process. And I kind of got into my geometry there a little bit. Okay, and now that's done. And then we'll have to do the same for the bottom. So we'll grab this point and that one, then we'll go across here. And then that is taken care of, and we almost have our bend completed. Now you will notice that this is completely off and this isn't symmetrical, which is bad. So what we can do is let's right click and with our point mode selected and go to slide. And what this will allow us to do is grab this point and slide it down. And we basically want this to be a lot more straight than it was. So something like that. And then let's come back up into here. Let's go to our front view so we can kind of try to line this geometry up. So you can see we need this geometry to be in line with the other 2 points. So we'll drag those up there just like that. And drag that one over just like that. Now we should have a pretty even corner piece to our rim. Now it does curve in here, so what we can do is press M and then K. You'll see if I press M, that brings up a quick menu, and press K, that will bring up our knife tool. This is going to allow us to split the geometry, which is very handy to have. So number one, we're going to come over here when this tool comes up and check off restrict to selection. And then we have these different modes. We have line, loop, path, all these kind of do different things. But for this, I'm going to use a loop tool, or use the loop mode. And we're just going to find a good point here and kind of splice it right there in the middle. And what that just did was, if I go back into perspective mode, is cut an entire line all the way through the new piece of geometry that we just created. And then we'll go back into our perspective view and go to our live selection tool, and then click and get those 2 points there, and we'll just bring it up just like so, just like that. And then what we're going to do is press M again, press K on the keyboard to get back to our knife tool. We're going to change the mode from loop to line, and then all we have to do here is just click and then drag, and it's going to, or it should, splice up the geometry. So you're going to have to cut through, let's see if I select only edges. Yeah, so really all we have to do is turn on only edges here, and that way we don't have to slice all the way through a geometry, because we really don't need any excess points right here. We just need the points to be right about here and here. And then what we can do is grab these points, and let's make sure that, let's see what that did real fast. Not sure what's happening there. I think I made an accidentally made an extra cut that I didn't mean to do. So let me back out of that and start over. I apologize, I'm having some technical difficulties here. Okay, let's go ahead and turn off only edges, and let's just go ahead and use our line, and we're just going to cut all the way through a geometry like so. That's why I've got visible only. So something simple, as simple as that, you can see how that can mess things up for you. So let me get rid of this again. Let me back out of this. And what I'm going to do is make sure no other points are selected, and then check off visible only. This should take care of us. Now this should split the geometry up on both sides. So a perfect example of how you can miss simple things and it can cause you all kinds of problems. It was just a simple oversight on my part. So we'll do it again and click and drag and manipulate that geometry, so that we start to get this kind of nice little curve. And if we go back into this view, you will see that now this is taking shape, just like so. Now the only thing about this is this is pretty time consuming, and will definitely take some time to do this for all of these points. So I'm just gonna leave it at 1 for now, just so you guys kind of know how it's done, essentially. But yeah, that should be fine, and we'll call that good. So that's how we kind of create our own like little custom segment of geometry there, and yeah, we'll call it good. So moving on, I just don't want to eat up too much time with this tutorial. Right now, what we're going to do is go ahead and throw this tube in a subdivision surface. And you will notice when we do that, typically this is something that's always required when you're doing high poly modeling and you want something to look good. Look what happens. This does not look right at all. And that is because we're not quite done prepping our geometry for the subdivision surface. So we need a little bit more information for this to work with. So to provide Cinema 4D with that information, what we're going to do is go to the live selection tool, and we're going to make sure that only select visible elements is remained as selected off. And we're going to go here to the front view mode and hold down shift, and we are going to select the spokes, every side. So I'm just kind of going over all these points, all these spokes, and selecting every single side. And just don't want to do that. sometimes you might miss a couple, so it's always good to double check and make sure that you got them all. It looks like I did. I think I did. So once we have all these selected, we're going to right click and we're going to go to Extrude Inner. And we're going to click and drag. And you're going to notice that that is going to give us more lines and give us more geometry. So the tighter the bevel, the tighter these lines need to be together. But for this tutorial, we'll say that's good. And what that just did was equally divided up all of the geometry on our spokes, just like so. And so now the only thing left to do is to press M, K, go back to our knife tool here, make sure our tube is still selected. And we're going to go to the mode and change that from, if it wasn't there already, to loop. And we're going to add another line in here. Let's see, right about there. And then we're going to add a line across here. And we can even do 3 if we really want to. And we're going to add a line down here, like so. And that should be cutting all the way through our geometry on every single side. And we will have to do this for all sides if we want every spoke to look identical. And this will, once again, take some time. That's just the nature of modeling. Unfortunately, it's not super quick and easy. So I will finish making all these cuts in my model here. And as soon as this is done, I will be right back. Alright everybody, so I just finished up going through all of this and kind of adding more geometry. You can see how condensed these lines are with this piece. It might even make this a little bit tighter. It's probably be alright. We'll call that good. So we've got our lines there. We've got our lines for this point here as well. And you can see it's not perfect. It's kind of rough. I just kind of rushed through this. But essentially what we did is tighten up the geometry. So when we throw this in a subdivision surface, and real quickly I will show you what it looks like currently. Without a subdivision surface, this is kind of what we have. Now we throw this in the subdivision surface, and you will see what that did. So it makes everything look a lot smoother and a lot more rounded, and now you can actually kind of see that edge, that beveled edge in the actual reference image. Now this corner here looks a little messed up, and that is mainly because I forgot to add another segment down there. So let's go ahead and give this another render preview and see what that did for us. So you can see how drastically that changes the way the geometry looks by adding in those lines. So that's very important that you get that taken care of. But subdivision surface will round out the geometry and make it look a lot prettier essentially. And you can see here in a couple ones too, I also forgot to add some geometry. It's very noticeable if you forget. So I'll add a line there, and then I will also add a line here, just on the very end. And let's double check this again and see what it's looking like so far. So definitely a lot better, a lot cleaner result. So for now our spokes are pretty much they're pretty much good. I'm pretty happy with this, and I think now we can kind of move on to everything else. I want to add a little bit more detail on the outside of this rim. So to quickly do that, I could go up to the select tool, and then I could go to ring selection, and then just find the sweet spot there, and I can highlight the entire ring there, which is super easy to highlight all the polygons. And then from here I can extrude inner and click and drag, and then just go to extrude again and then drag in, and then now we've got this nice little lip. It's kind of interesting to look at. And once again, give that a quick render preview. And so far that is what we have. If we want to divide everything up even further, we can select the tube, we can go to mesh, and we can go to commands, and we can go to subdivide, and then press OK, and that will subdivide everything that we have selected. So that just subdivided everything in there even further. And a lot of this is just constantly fine-tuning and everything else. But you can kind of see how our rim is starting to take shape here. Like I said, you can continue to subdivide this and make that look even better, because this is a pretty not so perfect looking rim right now. But like I said, it takes a lot of fine-tuning, it takes a lot of tedious modeling. I'm not going to worry about it too much right now because we are going to be slapping a tire on this, and yeah, you're really not going to notice that it's not perfectly circular as much, so it's really not important. So yeah, we'll call it for good, but call it good for now. So let's go ahead and add the little hubcap piece here, and this isn't going to be super detailed. This is just going to be I'm mainly just doing this to show you some other cool things that you can do while modeling that will hopefully help you out. So this is by no means going to be a perfect representation or a clone of the reference image. This is just strictly showing you how the tools are, how they work. So I'm going to expand that. And of course, go back to our model mode there. And we are going to make that a lot thinner. And we'll say that's good. So that is going to be the hubcap piece to our rim. And right now it looks very basic and boring. What we're going to do is we're going to grab a cube and we're going to make these little indentations here that you see here. We're going to make those. So I'm going to grab this cube and I'm going to scale it down, and I'm going to add a fillet on here so that the edges are rounded, and I want it to be pretty smooth, but I don't need to add too many segments. Then I'm going to move this around and try to get it to scale. So that looks pretty close. Alright, and then I'm going to throw this in a cloner. So by holding Alt on the keyboard and going up to MoGraph and Cloner, that'll make the cube a child of the cloner. And from here I'm going to change it from linear to radial. And with the cloner selected, I'm going to go use the Move tool and slide this over and then up. And then what I'm going to do is expand the radius on these, and then we can just roughly rotate this in place, give or take. It's not going to be perfect, but that's pretty close. All right, and let's see how that's looking. Looks pretty good. All right, so now we're going to use a bool object, a B-O-O-L-E, to control this. So we need our first thing I'm going to do actually is make this editable. So I'm going to highlight the cloner and cube and press C on the keyboard to make all these objects editable. I'm going to highlight them again, and I'm going to go to connect objects and delete. So now these 4 squares or 5 squares that we have are being viewed as a single object inside Cinema. And then we're going to go to our bool, and we're going to drag and drop the, I believe it's a cylinder first, and then the cubes second. And what that does is gives us perfect little holes inside our object, just like that. So this is kind of where the lug nuts or the bolts would go inside the rim. And inside the bool, you can, you have all these other options, the type and everything, and how exactly it interprets the information. But for this model, this actually works out okay. Okay, so we've got that. We can throw everything once again into a subdivision surface. And that was gonna smooth some things out. Might look a little rough though, so it's not really necessary. I'm gonna go ahead and pull those out of the subdivision surface. I don't feel like going in and touching up the geometry again and doing all of that, so it doesn't do weird things like that. So We'll call that good. You know, so we've got our basic shape here, and like I said, I'm rushing through this, so this isn't perfectly aligned. You know, if you're doing this for a real project, I highly recommend really taking your time with this. You'll also notice I didn't pay any attention to beveling the edges or anything like that. Just not going to go into it in this tutorial. The main purpose is to just show you and introduce you to a lot of the tools and how they work is pretty much the main goal. And that's really all I'm concerned about. So I did notice while I was in that view that I actually missed a little spot, and I'm going to go ahead and fix that. And yeah, so now we are good. All right, cool. So what can we do now? Well, at this point, we could go ahead and make a tire. So essentially, to do that, we'd start with a primitive object again, and we would go for a tube. And we'll highlight this again, put it at a 90-degree angle. And we're going to play around with our outer radius and our inner radius. So we need our tire to sit maybe right here. And the outer radius definitely doesn't need to be that thick, but somewhat thick. And we'll increase our rotation segments just so this is a lot prettier looking. And of course our tire is way too wide at this point in time. So we will shrink that down so that it's pretty much right in line with our rim. And yeah, so not too bad. Shrink that down a little bit. And you want to be careful with how much with your poly count and everything, because at a certain point, if you start getting too many polys in your scene, your system will let you know, and things will start getting really sluggish. What we could do is even copy this again and cheat a little bit, and we'll just kind of try to disguise the fact that this rim isn't like perfectly round, you know, because I didn't really want to take the time to go in and smooth that out and go that route. So we can actually cheat a little bit and kind of disguise this. So let's see here. No, we don't need the inner radius to be so thick. Scale this down some more. Essentially what we're doing is just trying to disguise the fact that the rim isn't you know, perfectly straight. So we can do something like that, and we'll make this a little bit bigger and make sure it extends outwards a little bit. Alright, so it looks a little rough. Definitely gonna have to do some more fine tuning on this. If this was an actual project, of course, you will definitely spend more time making this look better. I'm just trying to briefly just kind of cheat this a little bit. This will definitely start looking a lot better too, of course, when you've got some textures and lighting going on and whatnot. But we'll call that good. So far that is our rim and our tire. It's completely untextured. Doesn't have any tread on it. And real quick, let me make an adjustment to the tire. I'm gonna go ahead and add a fillet on there and just make this look a little bit more round, so it actually does somewhat resemble a tire. Okay, so very quickly, there you go. You've got a tire on your rim. And real quickly, I just went ahead, I paused the video, and I threw this the inner rim in a subdivision surface and just kind of touched this up a little bit. But I think this is going to do it for this tutorial, guys. You can kind of see what we've created in another part, because this tutorial has already got pretty long. I will cover the tread and maybe throw in some textures on there and whatnot. But the main point of this tutorial was not to model a rim and a tire. The main point was to be able to showcase you some of the tools, the tips, and the techniques to become effective and efficient at modeling. So everyone kind of does their own thing in their own way, but I hope you picked up a lot and learned a lot about modeling in this video. And if you did, please like the video. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave those down below. and I will gladly see you in another video. Hope you guys have a good day.